Tonight, Israel ramps up its strikes on Gaza while Hamas vows to fight on. Little signs the killing of Yahya Sinwar will reignite ceasefire talks. Prisoners of war reunited with their families in a mass exchange between Russia and Ukraine. The bodies of a mother and her 2 children pulled from a waterway in Sydney's southwest, and healing from a painful past. Survivors of the Kincella Boys' Home gather to mark 100 years since its opening. I'm Ricardo Goncalves. This is SBS World News. Good evening. Hamas has confirmed the death of its leader, 61-year-old Yahya Sinwar, after Israel yesterday claimed to have killed him in Gaza. World leaders have expressed hope that Sinwar's death may prompt both sides to agree to a ceasefire after months of deadlock. Israel has been urged to take the win, having killed the man they blame for the October 7 attack, which left around 1,200 people dead and more than 240 hostages taken into Gaza. But a senior Hamas figure has pledged to continue the group's resistance, and Israeli leadership has indicated it will continue its military operations in both Gaza and Lebanon.
Friday prayers in Gaza. Among the rubble of partially destroyed mosques, worshippers mourn Yahya Sinwar.
استشهاد يحيى السنوار يعني فاجأ العالم أجمع على أنه استشهد ونقل صورة نوعية يعني للعالم أجمع برضه إنه كان قبل في المناشير اللي بنزلوها إنه شرد مثلا على مصر شرد على دول البرة.
The IDF released this footage showing a tank firing on a building in southern Gaza where they say Sinwar was located, earlier releasing this drone video of Sinwar inside. An Israeli autopsy found he was killed by a gunshot wound to the head, his death confirmed by a senior Hamas figure speaking from Qatar.
رجلاً كرس حياته من أجل فلسطين وقدم روحه في سبيل الله على طريق تحريرها.
The group defiant but leaderless for the second time in 3 months. Sinwar's predecessor, Ismail Haniyeh, killed in an airstrike while visiting Tehran in July. The US of the view Sinwar's death is an opportunity to reopen stalled ceasefire talks.
Sinwar was the main obstacle to getting a ceasefire done. Every time his political advisors would negotiate with and through them to come up with a proposal, he would just refute it.
Hamas blames Israel for the failure of ceasefire talks, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday said Israel will keep fighting in Gaza until it retrieves its hostages and destroys Hamas completely.
I don't think Israel's in any hurry to say, let's stop what we're doing. There's still a ton of work to get done.
Families of hostages say it's time for Israel to take its wins and seal a deal, a matter of utmost urgency, they say, fearing those still held in Gaza could be targets of retaliation for the killing of Sinwar.
Their lives are in great danger now, more than ever. We're calling on the Israeli government and the US administration to act swiftly and do whatever is needed to reach a deal with the captors.
Hamas has the same message for Israelis.
إن هؤلاء الأسرى لن يعودوا لكم إلا بوقف العدوان على شعبنا في غزة والانسحاب الكامل منها وخروج أسرانا الأبطال من سجون الاحتلال.
The US president, gathered with other world leaders in Berlin, said a Gaza ceasefire still presents a challenge.
We think that there's a possibility of working for a ceasefire in Lebanon, and it's going to be harder in Gaza, but we agree that there has to be an outcome. What happens the day after?
Foreshadowing that more is yet to come in the wider conflict, saying he's aware of Israel's planned response to Iran's attack at the start of the month, while the Israeli army claims success in its operations against Hezbollah in Lebanon.
אנחנו מעריכים שאנחנו באזור 1,500 פעילי חיזבאללה הרוגים, ואנחנו שמים את הערכות שלנו באזורים השמרניים. אני מניח שיש יותר ואנחנו לא יודעים, בהרבה מאוד תקיפות.
No indication from Israel of a change in their military objectives, both on its northern border and in Gaza. Alexandra Jones, SBS World News.
Staying with the conflict, and at least 33 people have been killed in IDF strikes on the Jabalia refugee camp, according to medics. Local reports say 20 of them are women and children. The Gaza government media office said the death toll is expected to rise as more bodies are thought to be under the rubble. Residents are also reporting a telecommunications blackout. The Israeli military said its forces operating in Jabalia for 2 weeks have killed dozens of militants in close quarters combat.
As world leaders talk about hopes for a ceasefire, Palestinians prepare their dead. Bodies wrapped in blankets and laid out for burial. These are videos posted to social media after the IDF struck several homes in Jabalia. This part of a renewed military operation in Gaza's north to prevent Hamas regrouping here. Medics and residents warn hospitals are overwhelmed and hunger levels heightened. Arab delegates at the UN uniting for an end to
the extreme danger of large-scale genocide in the northern part of Gaza, in which there are 400,000 Palestinian civilians being threatened either to be killed or to be starved to death.
The UN says no aid entered Gaza's north in the first fortnight of October. Hundreds of thousands of people again at risk of famine.
لما بطلع فيها يعني ممكن تروح من ايدي اهمال طبي اهمال برضه من الوضع اللي احنا فيه فيش شيء يعدي علينا.
While Arab countries conducted airdrops of aid, 30 trucks headed north overnight after the US warned Israel military aid would be cut if humanitarian conditions didn't improve. A spokesperson telling journalists in a briefing that Israel is, quote, fighting Hamas, not the people of Gaza. Israel denies blocking aid, blaming Hamas for corrupting delivery to the hungry.
The problem is Hamas, which hijacks the aid, stealing, storing and selling it to feed their terror machine while civilians suffer.
The World Food Programme says the flow of aid must be reliable and constant.
Nearly 2 million people in Gaza still face the risk of famine, and that risk will persist unless all border crossings remain open and aid continues to reach those in need.
That includes in the south, where Nord has 5 hungry children. She's trying to shield them from the worst.
نفسي أهلي لما يحكوا معي في التليفون ما يحكوش إنه إيش بنتهم خايفة أو إشي. بحاول أكون قوية كمان أنا. بحاول أكون قوية كتير قدام أهلي.
As winter looms, these families consider how they will feed their children. Rayanne Tamer, SBS World News.
South Korea's intelligence agency says North Korea had dispatched troops to assist Russia in its war against Ukraine. According to the spy agency, 1,500 troops have already arrived in Russia, with South Korean media quoting anonymous intelligence sources as saying the final figure could be closer to 12,000.
Under the night sky, families reunite. In a major swap, Ukraine and Russia have exchanged 190 prisoners of war in a deal mediated by the UAE. But these Russian soldiers are returning to find more than just their relieved family members. 1,500 North Korean troops are training in Russia's Far East, according to South Korea's spy agency. US officials are yet to confirm the reports, but say it would be a dangerous development.
I think we need to recognize that this is going to be a grave challenge. It creates some opportunities for us to expand our work, but at the same time, it is an ominous new development with respect to global politics.
There is mounting evidence North Korea has supplied Russia with ammunition, missiles and technology. Now Seoul's spy agency says these satellite images confirm what Russia has previously dismissed as fake news. The agency says the images show a Russian vessel collecting weapons, as well as North Korean troops gathering at Russian military bases. And it's thought another 10,000 troops could soon follow.
Це величезна загроза подальшої ескалації. Ми підходимо до нової фази, до нових реалій війни, агресії російської.
Kyiv is already outnumbered, with its stretched forces struggling to hold the key city of Pokrovsk. Thousands have been urged to evacuate the city, which is home to vital industrial and transport infrastructure. If it were to fall, Russia would gain a gateway to central Ukraine. And north of Pokrovsk, thousands more are under mandatory evacuation orders in Kupiansk as Russian forces press closer. With pressure mounting, Zelensky says allies have been pushing for the country to lower its military draft age.
У нас мобілізація з 25 років, і ми поки що не бачимо, для чого вводити ці зміни. Я вважаю, що це на сьогодні це небезпечно.
Instead, he's doubling down on calls for support, warning this war may soon belong to everyone. Sophie Bennett, SBS World News.
The race to the White House has taken both presidential candidates to the battleground state of Michigan, where opinion polls have taken them neck and neck. The campaign of personal attacks continues, with Kamala Harris seizing on reports Donald Trump is exhausted, questioning his fitness for office. Trump hit back, calling Harris a loser.
Separated by less than a point in Michigan, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump zero in on the swing state. Trump lost it in 2020 but won it in 2016. The Republican candidate making some big promises if he wins on November 5.
I am proclaiming to the people of this state that by the end of my term, the entire world will be talking about the Michigan miracle and the stunning rebirth of Detroit.
But a mic mishap silenced him for 20 minutes, his party faithful filling the void.
Thank you. So now what happens is I won't pay the bill for this stupid company that rented us this crap.
In Grand Rapids, no technical difficulties for the Democratic candidate.
18 days. 18 days left in one of the most consequential elections of our lifetime.
Harris jumping on reports Trump has been cancelling interviews and media appearances because he's exhausted. It's understood Trump earlier turned down an interview with CBS because of fact-checking issues.
Well, if you are exhausted on the campaign trail, it raises real questions about whether you are fit for the toughest job in the world. Come on. Come on.
Trump on the defence.
I've gone 48 days now without arrest, and I've got that loser who doesn't have the energy of a rabbit. Not only am I'm not even tired. I'm really exhilarated. You know why? We're killing her in the polls because the American people don't want her.
But Harris remaining focused on the so-called blue wall states of Pennsylvania, Michigan and Wisconsin, at an earlier rally shutting down anti-abortion protesters.
Oh, you guys are at the wrong rally. No, I think you meant to go to the smaller one down the street.
Exhausted or not, both candidates racing towards the finish line. Trump heading to Pennsylvania tomorrow, while Harris is expected to appear with former President Barack Obama and wife Michelle in Michigan next week. Phoebe Dees, SBS World News.
3 people have died in a triple drowning in Sydney's southwest. Police responded to reports of a woman and 2 children in distress in the Georges River at Lansvale. A short time later, the woman was pulled from the fast-flowing water but could not be revived. After an extensive search by emergency services, the bodies of a 5-year-old girl and a 7-year-old boy were found. The trio was seen in a nearby park and on a pier at the waterfront, but it's not yet known how they ended up in the water.
These are completely tragic circumstances. I think anybody can feel for these circumstances, not just the family, but anybody that observed what happened. It's beyond words how tragic it would be for people that observe what happened and for the family.
Witnesses attempted to save the family before emergency services arrived. Police are investigating if the children fell in the river and if the mother jumped in to rescue them. A report will be prepared for the coroner. The federal opposition has promised to make the great Australian dream a reality for more people by announcing a multi-billion-dollar housing infrastructure program. But the government says the promise doesn't make up for the coalition's planned cuts to spending on social and affordable housing.
It's the coalition's most ambitious housing policy to date. $5 billion to fast-track the construction of 500,000 homes in 5 years. A move the opposition leader has described as a game changer.
I'm firmly focused on making sure that we can build new homes for Australian families. I want to make sure that we can build these homes and backyards and make sure that young Australians have hope again.
This is a housing crisis. We need practical, tangible measures that are going to get Australians into affordable homes that they can own and raise a family in sooner.
The funding will go towards councils, utility companies or developers for infrastructure needed to get housing projects off the ground.
It's water in, sewage out, it's power in, it's roads to get people in and out of sites. These are the things that are holding up the projects at the moment.
We cannot build until the civil guys come in and prepare all the enabling infrastructure. So this is an exceptional first step in resolving the supply crisis that we have in this country at the moment.
The opposition says Labor's promise to build 1.2 million homes over 5 years has failed, with a likely shortfall of 400,000 homes. It added building approvals have also fallen to their lowest level in over a decade, dropping 8.8%.
We've got a $32 billion Homes for Australia plan. They're going to spend less money, not more. We are a government that's committed to building. Peter Dutton and the Greens have been blocking support for housing.
Peter Dutton has already said he would cut $19 billion out of Labor's ambitious housing agenda. Now he wants a pat on the back for putting $5 billion back in. Peter Dutton's taking with one hand and giving with the other. It's a card trick.
The latest plan builds on the opposition's existing pledge to free up 100,000 homes by drastically cutting migration and banning temporary residents from building homes for 2 years. Mahno Zanguri, SBS World News.
Coming up, Italy's controversial decision to divert asylum seekers abroad is dealt a blow. Security ramps up in Indonesia as one of its most consequential leaders prepares to hand over power.
Save public housing! Stop the demolition!
And hundreds of residents rally against plans to demolish public housing towers in Melbourne. A controversial deal between the Italian and Albanian government aimed at curbing migrant arrivals has been delivered a major blow after a court ruled 12 asylum seekers held at an offshore migration hub should be transferred back to Italy. The decision casting doubts over the feasibility and legality of plans to establish a migrant processing and detention outside the European Union.
Italy drawing a hard line on its immigration policy. But the Roman courts have other plans, undermining a controversial decision to divert asylum seekers abroad after their countries of origin were deemed unsafe.
Perché in buona sostanza quello che I giudici dicono è che non esistono paesi sicuri, quindi comunico ufficialmente che il problema non c'è in Albania.
The ruling means Rome's offshore facility in neighbouring Albania, used to hold those deported from the bloc, has been essentially emptied. The 16 migrants housed there diverted back to Italy within the first week.
Il problema è che nessuno potrà essere mai più rimpatriato. Il problema è che tu non puoi respingere la gente. Il problema è che tu non puoi fare nessuna politica di difesa.
Human rights groups have welcomed the Roman court's decision, saying, at a time when EU leaders seem intent on twisting rules, common sense and the bloc's founding values, it's heartening to see Italian judges uphold the rule of law. Italy's agreement with Albania seeks to process and repatriate around 3,000 migrants a month across 2 camps, excluding women and children. Italy's Interior Minister saying he is confident the decision will be overturned. The situation reminiscent of Britain's contentious asylum bill, which sought to deport refugees to Rwandan facilities, a policy later deemed unlawful by the courts. Germany is also looking to implement tougher border controls, leaving it open to warnings over racial profiling.
Wir müssen Schutz denen gewähren, die Schutz brauchen. Und das werden wir auch immer tun und nicht zur Disposition stellen. Aber es kann nicht jeder kommen. Wir müssen uns nach unseren Regeln aussuchen können, wer kommt.
Italy and France have agreed to combine policing efforts to investigate trafficking. But France says the cooperation does not extend to offshore processing.
Et pour des raisons juridiques, institutionnelles et aussi liées aux personnes qui sont susceptibles d'aller dans un tel centre en Albanie, je ne crois pas que cette idée-là soit transposable en France.
The Italian government still determined to see its plans through. Cabinet ministers will meet to review the decision on Monday. Raina Bosch, SBS World News.
A massive energy blackout is continuing in Cuba after one of the country's major power stations failed, leaving up to 10 million people without electricity. A thermoelectric plant stopped working on Friday morning local time, forcing the electrical grid to fail. Power outages have been chronic in Cuba for years, but have worsened in recent months. Earlier in the week, the Cuban government had announced that schools would close and other workers would stay at home in an effort to conserve energy.
Muy fuerte, muy fuerte. Muy fuerte. Esto está en decadencia. Y cada vez más apagones y más apagones. Imagínense usted. Esto está ya a punto del colapso entero.
There's no indication yet about when power will be fully restored. Security efforts are ramping up less than 24 hours out from the inauguration of Indonesia's 8th president, Prabowo Subianto. SBS Asia correspondent Aaron Fernandez reports from Jakarta.
This is an important moment for Indonesia as one of its most consequential leaders hands over power. The outgoing Joko Widodo and the incoming Prabowo Subianto appeared together at a military parade here in Jakarta earlier this week. Joko Widodo's 10-year presidency will be remembered by many Indonesians as a period of strong economic growth and investment in infrastructure. His approval ratings remain high, and it was his support for his former rival that made the difference for Prabowo Subianto during the presidential election earlier this year. Prabowo is a former general who is alleged to have committed human rights abuses during his time in the military. He reshaped his image using social media and promised to adopt all the policies of his predecessor. But it was securing support from Joko Widodo for his presidential bid that really made the difference, and Prabowo Subianto did that by making the outgoing president's eldest son, Gibran Rakabuming Raka, his vice president. And that's essentially where Joko Widodo's presidency ends and Prabowo Subianto's presidency begins, amid concerns that nepotism is growing and democracy is eroding in Indonesia. The incoming president has formed a ruling coalition that may end up including all of Indonesia's major political parties, effectively ruling out any opposition to the government. It also remains to be seen how and for how long the two men will coexist, with Prabowo Subianto in power, but Joko Widodo still wielding enormous influence behind the scenes. An estimated 100,000 police and military have been deployed to the streets of Jakarta. Those include snipers and anti-riot teams. They've been holding drills and are expected to be in place for several days. Indonesia's Air Force has also deployed 4 F-16 fighter jets to protect foreign dignitaries flying in for the inauguration, and Australia's Defence Minister Richard Marles is expected to attend.
That was Asia correspondent Aaron Fernandez reporting from Jakarta. Returning home and Commonwealth Bank customers are being urged to check their accounts for any duplicate transactions after users flooded social media to vent their frustrations over an issue impacting their balances. The duplicate charges involve transactions from recent days and have resulted in some customers' accounts being overdrawn. The Commonwealth Bank has apologised and says the process to reverse the transactions is underway. Hundreds have rallied in protest at plans to demolish inner-city Melbourne public housing towers. The Victorian government denies its privatisation by stealth, saying after more than half a century standing, the towers are well past their use-by date, with the first due to come down late next year.
On the move, fighting to stay put.
Save public housing! Stop the demolition!
Public housing residents take to the streets against plans to shift them out of their homes.
Homes for people, not for profit!
They're not just houses, they are people's homes that they have lived in for years and years.
Ethiopian-born single mother Beza Gazor says getting public housing 3 years ago saved her life.
And now to hear it's getting demolished is giving me that anxiety again. And I just started to feel comfortable, build a community, get a garden over there, and I'm gardening with my little one.
Dozens of blocks across the state, including these that were controversially locked down during the COVID pandemic, are set to be razed to the ground under a multi-billion-dollar public housing revamp. It's left residents again fearful for their future.
Anxiety, panic attacks. I mean, public housing already comes with so many issues.
Giving me more medical conditions that I could think of. Stop privatising this. This is not what we need.
The Victorian government argues that at 50 to 70 years old, the towers are beyond their useful lives. And it says the relocation of residents to new and better homes is already well progressed. Residents deserve better places to live than the old towers, Housing Minister Harriet Shing says. That's why we're replacing them with new apartments with better light, heating and cooling, security, accessibility and green spaces.
That's a whole lot of PR spin.
According to the Greens, previous experience of rebuilding public housing estates with the private sector shows only a third of the land gets set aside for so-called community accommodation.
You can just imagine the dollar signs in their eyes when they came touring these estates with their real estate buddies. 2/3 of these estates are handed over to private developers for for-profit, expensive housing.
A residents' class action against the demolition plans is due to be heard in the Victorian Supreme Court later this month. Gareth Boreham, SBS World News.
Counting has begun in the ACT election, where Labor's Andrew Barr is seeking to extend his reign as Chief Minister. Minister Barr has been in charge of the nation's capital for almost a decade, currently in a coalition with the Greens. Liberal leader Elizabeth Lee is leading the challenge to Labor. And after evading police for more than a decade, a Brazilian man has been sentenced at Queensland Supreme Court to 8 years in prison over a plot to smuggle cocaine. The man, who's now 42, was one of 7 people arrested and charged on the Gold Coast in 2012 as part of an operation into international drug trafficking. He skipped bail but was re-arrested by police in Western Australia 2 years ago after a traffic stop. Sombre ceremonies have taken place on the mid-north coast of New South Wales, where people gathered to mark 100 years since the opening of the Chinchilla Boys' Home. The home was run by the state government for over 50 years and was a place where young boys were taken, against their will, to assimilate under the White Australia policy. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander viewers are warned that the following story may contain images of a person who has died.
The emotions were raw.
Still bad memories.
What age were you when you lobbed in here?
It always brings up a little thing that the 7 of us were taken away from my mother.
The very grounds that were walked on decades ago, barefoot in freezing conditions. Now, a very different experience.
I could feel the ice cracking underneath my feet when I was walking across the lawns of the papers, and we couldn't do anything, and we knew exactly where the sun was going to shine, so we'd sit there and wait for it to shine on us.
Survivors of the infamous Kinchela Boys' Home, gathering at the site of so much pain and trauma.
The one thing I want them to give me back is what they took away from me. And they took away my family structure.
The people here relived the brutality that they endured and shone a light on the history of this place, an important part of healing. Only 49 of the over 600 boys that were sent here are still living to share their stories, all given numbers instead of names.
Brought me in through that, the gates, took me to an incinerator, burned all my clothes, took my identity and culture, stayed the other side. My name stayed the other side as well. I became number 12.
You wear that number 12 on your chest, do you wear that with a sense of pride or reclaiming?
Exactly, pride. And it's the pride of what they gave me to show that I'm strong enough to carry this bloody thing around and still say that number.
Survivors now using this event as a chance to reclaim their identity and culture, using their stories of resilience as a source of strength for the next generation.
I was flogged, starved, sexually abused, and our children, most importantly, they are the knowledge elders of the future. And we need now to tell them about the trauma that we went through so that they can build a better future for where they're going.
At a time when truth-telling is at the forefront, shining a light on the shameful history of the home is an important step for healing for the survivors, now uncles and elders. The site is now in the hands of First Nations ownership, managed by a non-for-profit Aboriginal community organisation. While generational trauma persists, there's hope that this site will transform into a sanctuary for healing. Dan Rennie, SBS World News.
And if this story has raised concerns for you or anyone you know, contact 13 Yarn. It's a culturally safe hotline that operates 24 hours a day. Australians drink around 6 billion cups of coffee each year, and most of the used grounds end up in landfill. However, Australian researchers have found new use for that waste, and it's not just coffee being repurposed.
In keeping with Buddhist principles, this path was designed to be gentle on the environment.
We are really trying to protect our environments. That means we are really trying to help for every single being who are living in the world.
The monks at this Melbourne monastery share the garden with the community.
All the monks practiced walking meditation. Even the lay people use this park. Children run about.
As part of a new trial, the path is made with fibres extracted from used reflective safety vests.
We are so happy because it is pretend like a normal concrete.
The project, funded by Sustainability Victoria, was led by Associate Professor Melindu Sundanayaka, a disciple of the monastery. In a lab at Victoria University, his team is busy finding new uses for waste materials.
We convert this into shredded fibres, which is an extraction from the high-vis vest.
The polyester fibres are blended with other waste and moulded into concrete cylinders. These are then rigorously strength tested.
The target strength that we intended was achieved earlier than what we expected. It is almost as comparable with traditional concrete mix design that we designed for, and it had superior durability.
Researchers say replacing raw materials in concrete with waste cuts the amount sent to landfill and helps reduce carbon emissions.
High-vis vests don't last for long. It just only lasts around 25 washes. So that means we tend to find these high-vis vests quite a lot going to landfills.
Across town, this path on a busy highway is made from concrete containing biochar from spent coffee grounds. Earlier trial results found the product was 30% stronger than traditional concrete.
The process of creating biochar is basically you grab your spent coffee grounds, so you roast it in the pyrolysis unit. Roasting is basically in the absence of oxygen. You roast it at 350 degrees centigrade temperature, and there comes the black-coloured coffee biochar.
Environmentalists say reusing waste products from coffee and clothing is a win-win.
We need to think about our resources as just that, resources, not waste and not things that we use for a small period of time and then send to landfill.
Small steps to treading more softly on the earth. Edwina Guinan, SBS World News.
Coming up, revelations from a former Fulham captain, 20 years on from her encounter with the club's late owner Mohamed Al Fayed. And Auckland FC sends the fledgling A-League club's fans wild to start the season. In the UK, the former captain of Fulham's women's team says she was assaulted on 2 separate occasions by then-owner Mohamed Al Fayed. Ronnie Gibbons says both attacks took place at Harrods department store more than 2 decades ago. Now in her 40s, she's decided to tell her story.
Gibbons is going to come on.
She led a team of trailblazers. Fulham ladies, the first women's footballers in Europe to turn professional. But behind her smile, team captain Ronnie Gibbons was hiding troubling experiences at the hands of the club's owner, Mohamed Al Fayed.
You just arrived? Yeah.
She became the first person to speak publicly with allegations against the late billionaire, directly in relation to Fulham. Recounting in some detail 2 incidents she says happened in his private office at the luxury London department store Harrods in 2000, when she was 20. Speaking to The Athletic, she said she was taken to Harrods by members of Fulham staff and then left alone with Al Fayed. Recounting one experience, she said, "He held my arms, pulled me in and tried to kiss me on the mouth. I sort of moved my head so he could only kiss me on the cheek." She said she was wearing her Fulham tracksuit at the time and froze. She went on to say, "I was used. I just felt a huge responsibility on my shoulders because we'd just turned professional. Everything internally was screaming at me, 'Ronnie, you need to leave.'" Last month, the BBC aired a documentary and podcast containing testimony from former Harrods employees who said Al Fayed sexually assaulted or raped them. Since then, a further 65 women have contacted the BBC, saying they were abused by him. Lawyers representing survivors of Al Fayed had always warned that wherever he went, there would be victims. Now the allegations have come to the door of Fulham Football Club, which once celebrated the impact of Al Fayed on its women's team.
Sad, is really sad to listen. We all feel something, as I said, not just a Fulham as a human being, and we have to be completely against the situation. We are talking about something that happened probably 25 years ago. It's not something that was last year or 2 years ago or 3 years, but it's sad anyway.
Gota Hoganes, the Fulham coach.
Former Fulham women's manager Gota Hoganes, who was appointed after the alleged incidents involving Gibbons and Al Fayed, last month said club staff stopped the owner being alone with players, having known he liked young blonde girls. Gibbons was said to be frustrated by his comments, and today Hoganes apologised to her, saying more should have been done to protect her and others.
The women's football environment in particular, there are some significant challenges, and it brings to the fore the prevalence of power imbalances and the risks to women in the industry working both on and off the pitch. You know, for players, it's really important they are protected, they are safeguarded, and that their voices are first and foremost listened to. And that's the same for women off the pitch as well.
Lawyers say they are representing 3 other former Fulham players. The Lionesses have stood on the shoulders of players like Gibbons, but no one knew the price she paid for pursuing her footballing dreams.
Laura Scott with that report. And if you or someone you know needs support, you can seek 24-hour help through 1800 RESPECT. That's 1800 737 732. Time now for Saturday Sport with John Baldock. John, a historic day in the A-League men's today.
Good evening, Ricardo. It was a return to the A-League today for Auckland. 18 years since a professional franchise last played there. Auckland FC took its bow. The 20th A-League season began last night with a scoreless draw between the Central Coast Mariners and Melbourne Victory, but that contrasted with the action in New Zealand today when the newest club took on the Brisbane Roar in front of a sellout crowd.
And football walks out of the shadows of its checkered history in the city to what they hope will be a successful new dawn.
And that new dawn was adorned with a Maori ceremony to mark the occasion. As early as the 8th minute, a surging run by Auckland FC captain Japanese international Hiroki Sakai produced the opening goal.
Hiroki Sakai, the architect, Harry van der Saag, the unfortunate culprit for the Roar.
Brisbane tried to hit back, but Nasa Acosta's shot was dealt with by Alex Paulson in goal. In the second half, another good save, this time by Macklin Freak, denied Liam Gillian. But the Black Knights wouldn't be denied. Logan Rogerson sending the Mount Smart fans wild with the clincher.
Here's De Vries, here's Rogerson! De Vries the provider. Rogerson with the finish, and didn't he love that, the hometown boy?
And for the A-League's newest club, it was a perfect start in front of a sellout 25,000 crowd.
It was so great atmosphere, and yeah, it was a great memory for me.
No, really exciting day. Great day for football in New Zealand and Auckland. You know, thousands of kids are going to see their heroes here, and we've had a lot of special football memories over the years here in New Zealand. But you know, this will just be the next level, which will be great.
And New Zealand football will get its first Kiwi Classico in round 3 when Auckland takes on the already established Wellington Phoenix. The grand final rematch that opened the season last night didn't live up to the excitement of the decider, but there was still plenty of drama. Socceroo defender Jason Guerrier was shown a straight red card for a dangerous tackle on Alu Kuol, but VAR review reduced the punishment for the Victory man to a yellow card. The visitors had the better of the first half, Bruno Fornaroli earning a penalty, but missing the resulting spot kick, which he took himself.
And hits the post and doesn't score!
VAR was back in the spotlight in the second half, this time increasing a punishment. Roderick Miranda given a yellow for a high kick on Mikael Docker, but on review it was upgraded to a red card.
It's red card for serious foul play.
Despite having 20 minutes with an extra man, the Mariners failed to make the advantage count and the points were shared. There were emotional scenes in England's championship between Sheffield United and Leeds. Tributes were paid before kick-off to former Blades defender George Baldock, who died in Greece last week, aged 31. A minute's silence transitioned into a minute's applause, with the players, including Socceroos defender Harry Sutar, wearing black armbands. Leeds went on to win the Yorkshire Derby 2-0. New Zealand and South Africa will contest the Women's T20 World Cup final on Monday morning. The White Ferns held their nerve in Sharjah, defeating the West Indies by just 8 runs in the semi-final blockbuster. The hero of the final was 37-year-old veteran Susie Bates, bowling in a World Cup match for the first time in 8 years.
As you can see, a bit emotional, but really proud of the girls. Yeah. The girls really stuck around each other and supporting, and we knew that we could get it done. And, you know, we got over the line in the end, so pretty proud of the girls.
It'll be New Zealand's first appearance in a final for 14 years. And while the White Ferns are just one win away from lifting a major cricket trophy, the country's yachtsmen have cruised to within one win of retaining the America's Cup. The Holders outclassed the British challengers in both races to take a 6-2 lead in the first of 7 series. Peter Burling's New Zealand outpaced the Ben Ainsley-led opposition in difficult changing wind conditions. Australian boxer Tim Tszyu and Bakram Murtazaliev have successfully weighed in for their super welterweight title bout tomorrow. But Tszyu's fight has also caused a family reunion that's got Australian boxing fans excited. Tim's enigmatic father Kostya surprising his sons in Florida, adding his ringside support for the first time in many years. A new chapter in a complicated family history is about to be written.
Bakram Murtazaliev against Tim Tszyu.
An intense face-off between the challenger and the defender of the IBF super welterweight title.
Tomorrow morning, as I said, it's going to be a big fight. I don't like to talk, I like to fight.
This is my moment, vengeance and no mercy on my mind. Simple.
The 29-year-old Australian is striving to emulate his Hall of Fame father in becoming a two-time world champion. And Kostya Tszyu crashed the party. After more than a decade, Australian boxing's royal family has been reunited.
What advice are you going to give to Tim about this fight?
Don't get hit.
3 words.
No, it's a great reunion. Again, he's like a foundation for us. The reason why we got into the sport, we pay all our respects to him.
So much on the line of this rare unification fight between Kostya Tszyu and Zab Judah.
The 55-year-old Hall of Famer was the biggest ticket in Australian and international boxing in the early 2000s.
And ending strong. Down he goes. A right hand. He's in trouble. He's in real trouble. It's over.
In 2005, Ricky the Hitman Hatton dethroned Kostya in Manchester. And 3 years later, the Thunder from Down Under left his family for a new one in Russia.
I'm not involved with anything what's happening in the world. My job is raise kids. It's #1 responsibility for me. Something that I missed with my boys.
When Kostya left Australia, Tim, Nikita and sister Anastasia were raised by their mother Natasha. Over time, the kids reconnected with their dad. Kostya hasn't been ringside for any of his son's combined 35 professional bouts since Tim's debut in 2016. And it's the first time Kostya has seen Nikita in 11 years.
They're in my heart every second. They're in my thought every second.
My biggest sometimes competitor is my dad. For me, it became from creating my own identity to becoming, let's say, the greatest boxing family ever lived. For me to do something like that, then I have to overpass him. So
the younger Tszyu hoping his father won't be a distraction, but a support network outside the ring. Marcus Megalokonomos, SBS World News.
Bella Nipotina has won the Everest race at Randwick today, and at $20 million, it's the world's richest race on turf on a famous day for trainer Kieran Maher. Craig Williams steered the 7-year-old to a strong run in the straight to win just ahead of the 2022 winner, Giga Kick. Bella Nipotina is the first mare to take out the 1,200-metre race.
You know, we thought she was in career best form and she got her conditions to suit.
That's what we work hard for, you know. I've got to thank my whole team, my family that's here. So, yeah, it's amazing. It's very, very special. But again, I can't do it without the performance of Bella.
While in Melbourne, it was another Maher-trained horse, Duke de Sessa, that took out the Caulfield Cup. And Spain's Jorge Martin has had a field day at Phillip Island, securing pole position for the Australian Motorcycle Grand Prix. He also claimed victory in the first ever sprint race and extended his lead in the MotoGP World Championship standings. Australian motorsport legend Mark Webber made a special guest appearance, waving the checkered flag. And it's going to be a big day in the Zoo household tomorrow, Ricardo, but it's good to see the family getting back together.
Yeah, good to see. Thanks, John. Coming up, the weather and... The spirit of New Orleans comes alive on the streets of Melbourne. To the weather forecast, a trough which extends from the Northern Territory through central Queensland and into northeastern New South Wales is generating low cloud with embedded thunderstorms. A decaying cold front is directing low cloud over southeast Victoria and New South Wales. Major centres, partly cloudy in Brisbane, partly cloudy too in Sydney, where it'll become windy too. Sunny for Canberra, clouds in Melbourne, partly cloudy in Hobart and Adelaide. Showers will develop as day goes on in Perth, while there'll be a shower or two for Darwin. Further afield, showers in Nandi, rainy in Tahiti, partly cloudy for Auckland, fine in Wellington. In Southeast Asia, thunder for Bangkok, Phnom Penh and Singapore, clouds in Jakarta, a few showers in Honiara. Further north, drizzly in Beijing, fine for Seoul, clouds for Tokyo, wet in Hanoi and Manila. Further west, fine in Beirut and Jerusalem, partly cloudy in Islamabad, fine for New Delhi, thunder in Mumbai. Europe now, clouds in Stockholm, rain in London, foggy in Rome, showers for Istanbul. In Africa, fine in Algiers, Cairo and Casablanca, partly cloudy in Dakar, thunder for Lagos, Nairobi and Johannesburg. In South America, thunder too in Caracas, a few showers in Panama City, rain in Bogota, clouds for Buenos Aires. And for North America, showers in Vancouver, fine in San Francisco, New York and Washington, a few showers for Havana and rain in Mexico City. The streets of Melbourne have come alive with the sounds of big brass and percussion for the city's annual International Jazz Festival. Straight out of Louisiana, the TBC New Orleans Brass Band leading the street parade along the Yarra River to Federation Square. The festival brings together more than 100 events and performances from around the world, along with experimental jazz scenes in the UK and Japan. Recapping our top stories now, Hamas has confirmed the death of its leader Yahya Sinwar after Israel yesterday claimed to have killed him in Gaza. World leaders have expressed hope that Sinwar's death may prompt both sides to agree to a ceasefire after months of deadlock. South Korea's spy agency says that 1,500 troops from North Korea have already arrived in Russia to help in its war against Ukraine. The federal opposition has promised to make the great Australian dream a reality for more people by announcing a multi-billion-dollar housing infrastructure program. And Bella Nipotina wins the Everest, the world's richest horse race on turf. And that is the world this Saturday. From the team, I'm Ricardo Goncalves. Good night.